I do highway work. Not the glamorous kind with orange vests and TV helicopters circling while we pour a new overpass. My company leases data from the reflector posts and mile marker cams, those tiny solar nubs that blink at you in the dark like an insect cluster. My job is making sure they're alive and talking. Swapping batteries, scraping winter salt off lenses, logging anything that looks off. It's a lot of night driving. A lot of shoulders, rumble strips, wind that smells like damp pennies. You start to notice patterns doing that. Which ramps fill fastest when a football game ends, which rest areas always have one bathroom closed, which motel lots are graveyards for single headlight sedans. And you notice the bulletin boards. They were what got me thinking a few months back, when the air still had that late spring bite. At a gas station in western Pennsylvania, there were 3 missing flyers with fresh staples. I pumped gas, skimmed them. One guy was a contractor, last seen near a state route. No body, no vehicle. A woman in scrubs who never made it to her night shift. A college kid whose mom wrote on the bottom in pen, "Please call your mother." 2 weeks later, I was in southern Ohio. Different interstate, different vendors, but the same faces had cousins. A delivery driver, last ping near a construction zone. A teacher who never came out of a toll plaza bathroom. No, you could tell, because paper curls a certain way when it's been rained on, and these still had fight in them. By July, my roots stretched into West Virginia and Kentucky. The boards were heavier. If you stared long enough, you could play connect the dots with counties and see a slow wave of absence moving east to west along the blue lines. None of them said foul play suspected. Not in those words. But there's a way a trooper writes. If you have any information, that means we don't have a damn thing. Loners go missing. Drunks stumble into culverts. A lot of explanations work even when they shouldn't. I don't think about it any more than you would, except at a truck stop outside of Huntington, where an old guy with a hard hat and a ring of nicotine on his first 2 fingers saw me replacing a reflector battery and struck up a conversation.
"You keep to the center when you drive at night,"
he said, like it was advice passed down from my grandfather.
"Left lane where the seams don't line up so good."
I made a polite noise. Yeah?
"Seams,"
he said, squinting toward the black shoulders beyond the floodlights.
"Where the lanes go cut and relayed, where the guardrail sections meet, things like that. The seams look for the slow ones on the edges. It's truer the closer you get to the state line."
Truer how? He tapped ash into the wind.
"You'll hear it before you see it. Sounds like someone rolling their knuckles down a stovepipe."
He smiled in that way you don't want a stranger to smile, and went inside. He didn't come back out while I finished. I didn't make a connection until 3 nights later, because you never do until the bad thing starts touching the good parts of your routine. The camera near mile 118 on I-64 had been sending gibberish. I took the shoulder, hazards ticking, and parked half on gravel, half in weedy asphalt where a previous patch had sunk. The night fell sullen, high overcast. A lot of light bounced from the interstates, but not a star in sight. My phone had one bar that flickered like a tired eye. The camera wasn't dead. It was blind. It pointed at the eastbound lanes and recorded frames that looked like someone had pressed a wet thumb into the lens and dragged. Streaks. Blur. Fine, I thought. Condensation. I popped the housing, wiped. It fogged again, instantly, like the lens itself was sweating from the inside. While I was sealing it, the sound came. A soft, patient rattle from the guardrail just down the slope. Rung to rung, traveling toward me, a sound like a coin rolling across rigid metal. It paused when I paused. It moved when my hands moved. "Hello?" I called. Dumb, I know. But people walk out here. People hide. There's a look some drivers get. The kind that means they've been in the cab too long with the engine humming through their bones, and now they want to talk to anyone about anything. I've heard confessions in diesel breath I wouldn't tell a priest. No answer. The rattling didn't stop. I stood until my ears filled with blood. When I took one step towards the rail, it took one step back. Not footsteps, not exactly. Just a shift, like whatever balanced itself on the thin seam where one panel met the next didn't want to test my weight. The wind moved and brought me a smell I don't have a good word for. Salt, sure, but not ocean. Old tape, bandages that have been on too long. If you've ever pulled a sunburn in one piece and felt the sting where it parted. That smell. The rattle ticked 3 times and went away. I told myself, raccoon. They use guardrails like highways. I finished, logged, drove on. The coin rattle chased my car for 2 miles in fits, like a dog deciding whether to keep the game going, and then dropped away. The next week, I got assigned a cross-state spirit. Hit 5 dead units between Charleston and Lexington. Stop overnight at a motel with a manager who owed my boss a favor. Finish up before noon. I didn't want to go back out that way. I went anyway. I needed the hours. You know those old motels with doors that faced the lot and a neon sign that worked better when cigarettes were cheap? This one had added a second story in the 90s and then regretted it. The lobby smelled like powdered coffee and lemon cleanser. The woman at the desk gave me a key that had 23 scratched into the plastic with a knife, like she'd replaced the original and didn't care. When I asked about food, she said the machine in the laundry had microwave burritos. She looked at my vest and said, "If you're gonna leave by 4, use the side door. Front lock stick." "You get a lot of highway guys?" I asked. "People pass through," she said, and didn't mean me. My room had wallpaper that probably started life as cream and had drifted toward a color somewhere between mayonnaise and old bone. A TV that showed local news through a halo of static. When I put my bag on the bed, the mattress sighed like it had had enough of everyone. I'm not precious. I slept on worse. I showered, propped the chair under the doorknob, and tried to convince my brain that a night with a door you can see is better than one with a hallway. I left the TV on for company. The meteorologist was smiling too wide about a cold front that was really just another name for rain. Between the weather and the public interest segment about a canned food drive, there was a crawl that caught my eye. Authorities continue to search for local teacher last seen exiting the eastbound toll plaza at... The ticker stuttered, reset, and when it appeared, it was about a county fair. The static wasn't consistent. It blushed and faded like the signal had to breathe. When commercials came on, the sound dipped low enough that I could hear the quieter sounds in the room. The hum of the mini fridge, a neighbor's phone alarm chirping, and a thread of noise I first mistook for water in pipes. It wasn't. It was that rattle. Softer, here, coming from inside the walls. A hand traveling along a coat hanger. A spine flexing in a drawer. No, I thought. No, the walls were nothing. A metal grid, a bit of insulation, thin gypsum. Any noise from the lot would crawl through easily. But the pattern was wrong. It wasn't aimless. It traced the seams. I stood, put my palm to the join where one strip of wallpaper met the next, and the sound came to meet it from the other side. The paper was sticky in spots, like the parasite underneath had never fully set. When I leaned and looked close, I realized the pattern printed on it. Stately vines and medallions had been interrupted here and there by faint lines made with a fingernail. Straight lines, inch long, grouped in 3s. Surveyor's hash marks. Mile markers. The grooves darkened toward the floor. At the baseboard, someone had tried to peel the wallpaper up. It had come away in a narrow tongue, then stopped, as if whoever was doing it had hit something they didn't want to see. I didn't sleep. I lay with my shoes on and watched the seam where the wallpaper ended at the closet door jamb. It's a stupid thing, to be afraid of the point where 2 things meet. But once you hear the word seam said like a warning, you can't stop seeing them. The place where the carpet edge tucks under the threshold. The slit where the mattress doesn't quite kiss the wall. The V of shadow where the bathroom tile ends and the tub begins. It makes the world look unfinished, or like it's always waiting for something to slide between the pieces. At 3:12 a.m., because my eyes were doing that thing where they skimmed the red digits every minute. The rattle intensified. It rippled along the baseboard and up the closet casing. The little door labeled linen trembled. I'd noticed it earlier and ignored it. It wasn't a door so much as a panel, one of those maintenance cases that motel builders pretend is quaint. The handle was a simple circle of metal, cold when I touched it. I can't tell you why I did. Curiosity. Stupidity. Maybe because anything behind a door feels knowable. It opened 3 inches and coughed up air that smelled like tarps and wet wood. The rattle came from below, as if there were a vertical shaft full of hanging metal that someone was easing a hand down. I put my ear to the black gap. Bad idea, I know. The cold on my temple made my headache bloom bright. The sound was louder here, and underneath it, like a whisper pushed through teeth, I heard something say,
On the line.
I shut the panel. I pushed the chair harder against the doorknob. I stared at the ceiling until the light outside the blinds turned from orange to gray. Dawn makes fools of a lot of things. The wallpaper looked like wallpaper again. The seam marks could have been anything. The TV turned itself off because the cable box had given up trying. I was gone by 6, forgetting the coffee, forgetting to tell the desk clerk that her panel had a voice. I told myself not to drive like a scared animal. Scared ones make mistakes. But the road didn't feel like an escape. It felt like a conveyor. The sounds met me 3 miles west. My lane rose and fell in that shallow swell you get near bridges, and the guardrail started its song. The coin rattled, rung to rung. I moved left. It moved too. I slowed. It slowed. My phone had full bars, and I could have called someone. My boss, a trooper, anyone. But what would I say? There's a noise following my seam. When the figure stepped out, it did it without drama, which made it worse. No lunge, no sprint, just one long step out of the place where 2 panels met, like it had been waiting with 1 foot tucked into the crack. It put that foot onto the shoulder, then the other, and began to walk the paint line with an attention that made my mouth go dry. It wasn't tall. It wasn't short. If I had to swear, I'd say it was the exact average height of every missing person poster I'd scanned over the last 2 months. It moved like a marionette whose master was careful and precise. Its head was tilted slightly sideways, the way animals listen to underground rivers. It wore nothing I recognized as clothing. That makes it sound naked. It wasn't. It was finished. That's the wrong word, but it's the one my brain chose. Finished out, like a room with the drywall up and the corners taped. Its surface was matte and pale, tight over angles that were exactly where angles should go. Not muscle, not fat, just the suggestion of a man with all the steps between scaffolding and paint left out, and stitched where you'd expect seams. Along the sides of the arms, the outer legs, the line of the jaw. Not with black thread, with something the color of old tendon. Not sloppy, not Frankenstein knots. Neat. A tailor had worked. You want a face, I know. That's what people always ask. I wish I could give you a face so you could say, it looked like, and slot it into your idea of how fear should be. It didn't have one. Not the way you mean. There was a place where the face should be, and it was finished like the rest of it. Smooth, pale. If it turned just so, I could see depth under there, like fabric with a handprint pressed against it from the other side. My hazard lights ticked absurdly loud. The figure matched my speed easily without hurrying. When its foot hit the rumble strip, it shivered like a plucked string and stepped back to the smooth. It kept its attention on me, When I passed a mile marker, the numbers stuttered in my peripheral vision and reset in the rear view, like the road was skipping frames. I don't know why I thought of the old guy and his advice. I slid farther left until my wheels kissed the dotted line. The figure leaned, considering. The center of the road had fewer seams. 18-wheelers carve it smooth with their habits. The rattle of the guardrail softened when I moved away from it. The thing kept pace for a quarter mile, then slowed, like a fisherman letting a fish run against a drag. At the next exit, the sign for a toll plaza flashed 2 miles. Those places blaze. Sodium lamps, fluorescents, all the old light that makes a night feel like a doctor's office. If you've ever felt safe in a toll plaza, it's because something in you believes monsters don't like bureaucracy. I aimed for the plaza, breathing hard, knuckles slick. Behind me, the figure came off the shoulder and began walking the narrow seam between the slow lane and the line where the asphalt met the concrete of the ramp. It ran a hand, not fingers, a hand, because the pressure was flat, like a palm, along the seam, as if reading it. The sound it made was identical to my motel wall. 1,000 coat hangers singing. The closer we got to the floodwash of the plaza, the more it hesitated. The stitches along its jaw stood out. The surface of its skin rippled in faint, nauseous waves. Half the lights in the plaza were dead. They'd set up new LED housings, and the old sodiums stuttered in long lines, making a shutter-speed world. Every time the row over my head went dark for a heartbeat, the figure leapt closer without moving. Not with steps, with placement. My eyes tried to mark it and failed. It was simply more where it hadn't been, like it had slipped through the blink between frames. I took a lane with a human attendant. She was drinking coffee, arm out the window, nails painted a brave red. She looked at me like I'd arrived with 3 flat tires. "You okay, honey?"
There's someone... I started and stopped, because the words had too many chances to be wrong. Do you have a door I can pull into? A bay? A light?
"You need a rest?" she asked, slow, cautious. Behind me, the rattle rose, and the window glass beside my ear flexed. I ripped a 5 off by accident, hands shaking, and handed her 2 crumpled bills and a handful of coins, because I couldn't untangle change math in that moment. She opened her mouth to say something nice after overpaying. The floodlight over our lane blinked. I saw it there, between us, not touching her, not touching me. In the seam where the bulletproof glass met the frame, its palm flattened, feeling for entry like a blind person learns a face. The surface of the glass clouded with its breath, except breath is warm, and this was cold. When the light came back on, it had moved its hand to the seam where my windshield met the pillar. My own face pulsed ghostly in the glass, and for a heartbeat, there was another behind me, pressed up, not matching. "Go," the attendant said. She didn't look at the glass. She looked at me the way you look at a dog with its hackles up. "Left. There's a maintenance bay. I'll call someone." I gunned it across the lane, ignoring that my barrier arm hadn't fully lifted. It slapped the bed of my truck and cracked. The bay was a rectangle of cruelly bright light and polished concrete floors. There were coils of hose, aluminum ladders, cabinets with stenciled words. Absorbent, spill, salt. When I pulled in, the sound changed. The rattle went to a low hiss, like someone sucking a cut. I stopped and sat and listened to the world not ending for a full minute. Then, 2. The attendant came around, her red nails steady on her coffee cup. "You want me to call a trooper?" she asked.
What would I tell them?
She nodded like she'd been waiting for me to ask that. "That you got tired on the road and spooked yourself," she said. "They'll give you a lecture and a pamphlet."
In your lane, I said. The light.
"Been doing that," she said. "We're working on it."
I think it likes...
I started. I didn't know how to finish the sentence without sounding like I'd soaked my brain in old wives' tales.
The seams, I said, finally. Where things meet.
"Road's nothing but seams," she said. "Even the good ones. You should sit till the sun's up." I sat. I sipped her coffee because she put it in my hand, and it made me feel less like I'd been peeled open. When day broke, the plaza looked like any other. Men in ill-fitting polos using cones like they were chess pieces, a state truck humming, a woman in an SUV yelling because coins were no longer accepted. The place where the glass met the frame in her booth had fogged and dried in long, narrow ovals, like fingerprints that had been thinking about being footprints and changed their mind. I finished my job with a nervous efficiency. At each camera box, I stood with my boots angled so the soles straddled asphalt and grass. I didn't step on drain grates. I didn't let my pants hem brush the line where tar snakes had been poured into cracks. It's hard to live like you're allergic to joins. The world is held together by them. You want to ask, did it follow me? Of course it did. Not with a car chase, not with a movie monster sprint. In the weeks after, I'd be in my apartment and hear the heat come on and swear underneath the metal duct ping. There was a memory of knuckles on rails. I went to brush my teeth, and the seam where the counter met the backsplash had a blister, like something trying to breathe through latex. I had a scar on my knee from a childhood bike wreck that had been nothing to me for 20 years, and it itched deep, not in the skin, but in the idea of the skin. Like a zipper I couldn't see had twitched. I started driving different roads, state routes with more potholes than asphalt. I told myself I was saving time by avoiding tolls. I stopped staying in motels with wallpaper. I taped shut the little maintenance panel in the only one that had it. And when the clerk complained, I paid the fee and left without arguing. The boards at gas stations still had new faces. The wave of absence had rolled farther west. A man in Missouri, a girl in Illinois whose father wrote, "You can have the car, just come home." The staples glittered. There's a particular kind of hope in a staple. If you look at it right, the belief that fastening something will hold the world together. I don't have answers for you. I don't know if what I saw is the skinned man people write about when they get brave after midnight, or if that thing is just the shape fear takes on the interstate because we've built our lives out of pieces, and we know, deep down, that anything made of pieces can be taken apart. I know this. When you drive at night, keep to the center if you can. If something in the corner of your eye seems to match your speed without moving, don't blink between light pools more than you have to. Don't run your fingers along the seams of things absent-mindedly. Some things learn by touch. And if you hear a rattle like a coin rolling down a metal rail, patient, steady, curious, don't go to the shoulder. Don't lean over the edge of the world we've fitted together and listen to what lives between it. It already knows your route. It's been counting the miles. It only needs you to stop.
Thank you for listening and delving with me into the dark together.
Please remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. The more engagement this video gets, the more YouTube will push my content to others.
Thus, the following will grow.
All stories read in this channel will be available on Spotify, iTunes, and just about everywhere else. Links in the description.
Thank you for listening and feeding the cause. We'll be seeing you.